it is true that neither party is perfect. It is also true that only one party is trying to erode our democratic principles and norms. So anyone that makes an argument to me about principles, I'm like, what are you talking about? I mean, I never agreed with everything the Republican Party stood for either.
Hello and welcome to the Bulwark Podcast. I'm your host, Tim Miller. Could not be more delighted to be here today with the host of Deadline Whitehouse on MSNBC. She's got a new podcast as well, The Best People with Nicolle Wallace. It's Nicolle Wallace. I finally get to turn the mic on you.
It's terrifying.
I'm thrilled. I felt horrible because I was like, when do I get to turn the mic on you? And you're like, you've never formally asked me.
You've never asked me. This is my first
I think I did. I don't know, Pat. This is what I got to be a tougher booker, you know?
No, I think there was a cool factor that I mean, I've not been on a lot of podcasts. John Heilman's the only one that invites me on his podcast.
I don't think it's the cool factor. I think people are scared because you're doing 2 hours a day. You've got a newborn. I'm like, oh, do I want to bug Nicolle?
You know what? I mean, I've anchored the last 2 Saturdays and I'm entering this mode of like always on. Like it's like your endurance picks up when you do more.
Yeah. All right. I want to talk to you about your news life. We got to do a little actual news first, if that's okay.
Sure.
This morning, we've had, like, since yesterday's podcast, we've had a ceasefire announcement, more bombings, another temporary ceasefire, more bombings. So it's a little tenuous right now. I did a TikTok with Sam Stein on YouTube if people want to watch that. But the latest, we have the president. I don't usually play Trump's voice on the podcast, but we're going to make an exception for this one because he uses one of the podcast's favorite words. He's talking about his frustration with the fact that Israel and Iran did not follow the greatest ceasefire ever that he had announced on his social media feed. Let's listen to him real quick.
So I'm not happy with them. I'm not happy with Iran either. But I'm really unhappy if Israel's going out this morning because of one rocket that didn't land, that was shot, perhaps by mistake, that didn't land. I'm not happy about that. You know what? We basically have two countries that have been fighting so long and so hard that they don't know what the fuck they're doing. Do you understand that?
Maybe true of everybody involved, kind of. Does the Ayatollah know what the F he's doing? Does Trump? Does Hegseth?
There's always a projection, right? I mean,
what have you made about this whole 12-day saga?
Well, I feel like Bill Barr gave us bullshit because it was a direct quote, and now Trump has given us, they don't know what the fuck they're doing, and now we can just quote him.
That's nice.
So for that, I'm grateful. I think that we have to be careful not to become amnesiac, right? Like, this is a guy who couldn't pull off the egg roll without annihilating norms and ethics laws. And so we have to be really, really careful about what he says about the Middle East. Like, I get that he's the president, he's the commander in chief, he's the only one we have. But I'm uneasy broadcasting his tweets and his comments on a newscast because I don't know if he knows what he's talking about.
Yeah. I mean, and I saw that last night, and I was up laying in bed doing the unhealthy thing where I'm scrolling social media while also being in bed. So you're doing that. And we're like coming up on where the ceasefires was supposed to be. And he is sending out a bleat about how great and brilliant everything was and how it's the best ceasefire ever, in one post. And then the next post I see is like 4 dead in Israel because an Iranian missile broke through the Iron Dome, right? So it's like in real time, he's giving fake information.
Yeah, and I think it's for another draft to figure out if he knows it's false at the time. I don't know.
Sure.
But
he would have the ability to know if I knew.
Correct. But he I'm like, I think it was when we're living dog years, but I think it was 4 days ago that he broke with his hand-picked intel chief. Right. So it's unclear where he's getting his information. It's unclear if it's coming from U.S. national security agencies or elsewhere or the media. I mean, I don't, it's completely unclear who he's talking to and who he's listening to.
I had Bill Kristol. Me and Bill Kristol were going back and forth yesterday, and he's a little bit, I don't know, his old neocon muscles are flexing a little bit right now. And he's like, I don't like Trump, but the mullahs are so bad and the Iranian people deserve freedom and we don't want them to have nukes. And if it's a tailored strike, maybe that's a good thing. Maybe it weakens Iran more. Is there any of your old muscles flaring in that direction?
I mean, I put all those muscles out to pasture. But I think a clear-headed analysis. I mean, Senator Slotkin had this analysis that she'd been in Iraq and the Iranians have the blood of U.S. soldiers on their hands. I mean, they've been a threat and a danger, and they're an adversary, and that's clear. But I think we're in a tricky zone where we're trying to sort of sift through the chaos and the mayhem and find little flecks of gold. I mean, sure, there will always be them. And the other one is, thank God, all the men and women of the military that carried out this operation came home safe. I mean, that is truly a wonderful aspect of all this. But I'll leave that to others. I mean, I think my focus is on what happens next, what happens today, what happens tomorrow. And again, I think it's stupid to compare Trump to other presidents. It's fair to compare Trump to the last time he was president. And there is no one like Mark Milley around him. I mean, he seems to be listening to General McCain as chairman of the Joint Chiefs, but he doesn't say the same thing that he says. Trump's analysis the night of the strikes was that we had, quote, obliterated their program. McCain went out the next morning and didn't say anything close to that. An assessment hadn't even taken place when Trump addressed the nation. So there will always be, flecks of gold in that little thing of sand we sift through. And that's a good thing. But I think that the bigger picture is what keeps me up at night. Yeah.
I'm going to make you list all the things that keep you up at night at the very end. But I have a couple other news things I want to do. Lisa Murkowski was on Galen Druk's podcast, and credit to Galen because he was really relentless in questioning her about a topic that has been something that I've been wondering for a while, which is why she isn't considering, if not becoming a Democrat, teaming up with Angus King and creating some independent caucus within the Senate. He asked her about it. I want to play you it went on for like 6 minutes. So I just want to play a couple little bites from it and get your reaction.
Say Democrats win 3 seats in the next midterm election in the Senate. Mm-hmm. And they say, we're going to let you pass bills that benefit Alaskans if you caucus with us. You don't have to become a Democrat. You can be an independent. But if you caucus with us and provide the sort of 4th vote that we need to get from where we are now, and you can pass legislation that helps Alaskans, would you do it?
That's my primary goal. I have to figure out how I can be most effective for the people that I serve. That's why I'm going to continue to do a really hard job, because I want to try to help people. My problem with your hypothetical is that as challenged as I think we may be on the Republican side, I don't see the Democrats being much better, and they've got not only their share of problems, but quite honestly, they've got some policies that I just inherently disagree with.
She goes on to kind of, after he asks again and again, to kind of say, well, I'm open to it. I'm not, it was kind of a Jim Carrey. So you're saying there's a chance answer there a little bit, but I don't know. That just kind of left me feeling cold. I'm like, I don't even really know what she's talking about. Like, what is it?
Look, I mean, 2015's calling and they want their BS. Why can't you be a Democrat response back? Like, he's now orchestrated an insurrection against the U.S. Capitol. You ran for your life. I think there's footage of it because of Trump. The Republicans did nothing when he pardoned all the insurrectionists that made you run for your life. He's put people atop the FBI and the Pentagon who, generously speaking, are inexperienced. Accurately speaking, are completely unqualified. They were opposed. I mean, I think she opposed one or both of them. So the idea that their policy she's not totally psyched about on the Democratic side is ludicrous. And I think Trump is what he is. I think the Republicans are the bigger threat to the country at this point.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. I mean, how do you process all of it? I just look at her and I'm like we're now in year 9 or 10 of Trump, and one Republican, Jeff Van Drew of New Jersey, has switched parties from Democrat to Republican. None have gone the other way. No, I know we've had Liz Cheney and Adam Kinzinger, who we've had people who showed courage and then retired, Jeff Flake. But I can't process why Like, what do you think is really holding her up? I guess is my question. Could it possibly be energy policy? Like, what could it
No,
be?
I think the policy thing is ludicrous. I think there's a nostalgia for the old days and a delusion of the snapback theory, which you heard a lot during Trump 1.0. Well, Trump will leave and we'll snap back to normal Republican stuff. Normal Republican stuff hasn't appealed to normal Republican voters for almost 2 decades now. I mean, it's why, it's why Trump won the primary in 16. And so the idea that they're waiting to get back to doing, I don't even know what they think the normal stuff would look like. I mean, Portman was normal and he's gone, and he went along with all of Trump's stuff, and Corker was pretty normal and he's gone. And, I think it's this belonging, this affinity to stay in the club you've always been in. But I think it's delusional to think that it's ever going to be what it was when you joined it.
And I don't know about you. This whole thing has been pretty easy to me. Like, I get thanked sometimes by liberals, like on the street. They're like, "You're so courageous." I'm like, not really, actually. Like, he was a total clown. It wasn't even a close call. It was ridiculous. Had it been a closer call, maybe I would have been a coward too. Maybe I would have gone along with somebody that was unqualified too, but if in a more close run hypothetical, right? So I don't think it's so it's hard for me. As I wrote the book, it's hard for me to kind of process, like, why is it so hard for all these people? Like, why is it so hard for Bob Corker and Lisa Murkowski? Like, what do you think the reason is?
Well, I used to really anguish about it. But think about this. There has never been a book reported out by a reporter from Capitol Hill or a political reporter that shows anyone from J.D. Vance to Mitch McConnell to Boehner saying anything privately that's different from what you and I say. Mitch
Right.
McConnell, quote, "Trump is a despicable human being, the most despicable human being." Kevin McCarthy in that book by
Jonathan Martin.
Yeah. Impeachment was too slow. He wanted them to look at the 25th Amendment. J.D. Vance, America's Hitler, cultural heroine. So where I used to anguish, how do they not see what I see? The people who loathe him the most are the people who have completely sacrificed their integrity, their honesty, and their faith to what was real conservatism. And so that gives me some relief that at least I'm telling the truth about it.
Yeah. You never listen to Lisa Murkowski and think, she's making a point. Maybe I should be hedging a little more.
No. And I also think it's so lame. It's so lame. If you're a partisan, you are on a side because you believe in things. For me, what I believed in, and people will sneer at this, but I believed in the democracy stuff. I think Liz Cheney did too. And the idea that if that was your sort of path into being a Republican, that you don't see Trump as a threat to democracy as your off-ramp from it is ridiculous.
I want to do the way you believe in, because I get this question a lot too. I didn't know you until after all this. Like, we both worked for Jeb, but like in different eras, right? And
because I'm old.
And you're older than me. You are older. You look great though. And we both worked for McCain, but in different eras of McCain. Like, we never overlap. And so I didn't kind of know you until all the Trump stuff happening. So what do you like, thinking back to baby Nicolle, college Nicolle? Like, why were you a college Republican? What drew you to it?
I wasn't. I was a college journalism nerd. I squatted in all of the journalism classes at UC Berkeley, and I wasn't politicized by Berkeley. A lot of people either really embrace Berkeley's liberal history or don't see themselves in it. And I think there was a college Republican party there. I wasn't part of any of
My friend
that.
was a Berkeley College Republican. It takes a special type of contrarian to want to be the Berkeley College Republican.
But it happens. But I spent my college years interning at local television stations. I worked this like overnight shift, like 2 a.m. to through the morning shows until they took the national morning shows. And I covered the O.J. Simpson trial. I covered the earthquakes and the fires in the Bay Area. I used to hop in the van and run around with local great and amazing.
You are old. You covered the O.J. Simpson trial?
I cut
was
sound.
A child.
I cut sound when I was in college from the night before's testimony. I think I was 18 or 19.
Got it. Okay.
And it would make up these like 6-minute saw chunks on the local news before the national news. So I was like a TV news nerd. And when I graduated from Berkeley, I went to Medill. So I went to Northwestern and I was a local reporter. And then after sort of shooting, actually, there were a couple stories that I couldn't handle being the first person on accidents. I couldn't take it. And so sometimes I had the scanner and sometimes I would get there before the ambulance and I couldn't take that. And so I thought local news isn't for me. And so I moved to Sacramento and interviewed with a Republican and a Democrat the same week. And the Republican hired me. And that was how I became a Republican
This is such
press
a
aide.
90s story. This is like young people really do not get this, but like that was so. Michael Lewis wrote when I was writing the book. I didn't read political books because I don't know about you, because I like live it, and so I hate reading them, and so I never did. And so my editor was like, "You've got to read a bunch of political books and tell me which ones you like, so we can create a model." And I read this old Michael Lewis book from the 1996 campaign. It's like lost to history. It's called Losers. And it was about all the losing candidates. And it was so good. And he was so contemptuous of the fact that like the strategists on both sides of both parties like could have been totally indistinguishable.
Totally.
And like they could have switched sides very easily. And they got into politics because they liked politics as a game. And I was like, the number of people I know who worked for, I think, worked for Republicans and then voted against McCain and then voted for Obama in 2008. Like, there's still prominent Republicans around who privately told me they voted for Obama.
Yeah, because I think to do it, you are idealistic. You're more Aaron Sorkin than the Federalist Society, right?
Yeah.
And so I watched The West Wing, and I had this romanticized view of people doing the right thing. And I have an email relationship with Aaron Sorkin saying, like, you've ruined all this for me. I keep waiting for someone to put the crime bill in the drawer because it doesn't do anything to fight crime. He totally romanticized with The West Wing and the American president, what it would be. But so I started working for Republicans in California. I never worked for Pete Wilson, but it was sort of at the end of his time. And so George W. Bush was thrust onto the scene as the opposite in terms of immigration instincts to Pete Wilson. Yeah. And so it's pretty funny that the party has circled back around to Pete Wilson, who couldn't make his way out of New Hampshire after elevating, George W. Bush and John McCain, who essentially believed in something much closer to amnesty.
Yeah. The immigration thing is, to me, I don't know, sometimes left people are like, you were hoodwinked or whatever. And I was asking McKinnon about this on the show last week. And I was like, I don't think so. There was a fight within the party, right? But like there was a genuine kind of patriotic strain. Like it was almost jingoistic, kind of like pro-immigrant because we're so great. Like less like kind of humanitarian, but also because the US is so great. We want people who are fleeing communism, fleeing other countries to come here. And that, to me, was like kind of my origin story. I like really bought all that and was moved by it. That's part of the reason why this switch has been so like easy for me. But like, what do you think? Going back to all that, I mean, you were there with Bush and both Bushes, I guess. Like, how earnest was that? Like the more compassionate pro-immigrant pitch in those days.
So it played out within the second Bush administration. So Bush goes to address the nation on comprehensive immigration reform in 2005. And that speech had more drafts than that year's State of the Union address, which was the first year after his reelection. And I think that's a reflection of the tug of war even within the administration. And I spent enough time with Bush at that point. I was his communications director in the second term. And he had I think he saw it the way you just articulated. Reagan is the last president to really do sweeping amnesty. And I think Bush saw immigrants as vitally important, totally persuadable I think he believed he could make a case about conservatism to any immigrant family and try to win their hearts and minds. As a Texas governor, they weren't otherized to him. I mean, he saw them as part of the community, part of the faith community, part of the economy. Bush was never a fan of people having to return and then get in line because he knew that nobody would do that. Bush also had an extraordinary amount of comprehension and compassion for anyone who put their children on a bus or on a train or sent them to America for a better life. I mean, he thought that was in some ways just this incredible statement about what America was to a mom or a dad who wanted to send their kids to America for the American dream. So Bush saw immigration the way Reagan did, the way I think you and I see it, and was defeated and undermined by his own party in trying to do comprehensive immigration reform. And there was a way to do it with Democrats, but Cheney, having served, in the ranks with the House Republicans, was not a fan of that. But Tony Snow was the White House press secretary. And so I had the job of booking Bush, Cheney, and Tony Snow on conservative talk radio, which was the driver before the podcast era. And I remember booking Tony, who I adored, and Bush and Cheney on with Rush, on with Hannity, on with I think Mark Levin was one of the people,
the great one,
and really trying to make the case. And I don't think any of them really supported it, but they let us make the argument. Yeah. And I think it was Bush's first window into how nativist and isolationist the party was becoming, even during his second term.
So what about you? Do you look back on that and feel like I should have seen it a little earlier?
Oh, I mean, I did see it. And I think, the only Republican I worked for after that was McCain, who saw it. It was the issue, I think, on which Bush and McCain agreed the most vociferously and agreed from this really deep, how they saw America place. So I've never worked for anyone who was conflicted about this. I think McCain and this was going to say. So McCain and Kennedy saw comprehensive immigration reform the way Bush did. I mean, oddly, Rubio did for a minute also, but then became. Yeah.
Do you look back at it, or you conflict about anything else? I mean, I was watching.
I'm conflicted about all of it. I mean, I'm conflicted about being part of Palin. I'm conflicted about
Guantanamo, and I was watching Mauritanian this weekend, and I was like, oh God. I mean, I don't know. That was a movie about one of the guys that was in Guantanamo that may be wrong. I don't know. You'll never know, but.
Yeah, look, and I think just keeping your mouth shut and letting people who paid the ultimate price for the country because of the foreign policy decisions that Bush made is the path I've chosen. I mean, I've been on the air obviously the last week, and every bad comparison is a comparison back to the decisions made by my old boss in that region. So, yeah, I'm conflicted about all of it. I mean, if you don't get older and wiser and platform your own sort of internal regrets and things you do differently with twice as many years under your belt, there's something wrong with you.
Amen to that. I always think the stupidest criticism people have of me is like, you've broken your principle. You've changed. And I'm like, you haven't changed? We elected the stupidest person in the country president twice. It hasn't changed your view on anything. Like, it doesn't seem like you're a very deep thinker in that case.
Right. And like the idea that it is true that neither party is perfect. It is also true that only one party is trying to erode our democratic principles and norms. So anyone that makes an argument to me about principles, I'm like, what are you talking about? I mean, I never agreed with everything the Republican Party stood for either.
Yeah. Buying seafood can sometimes be a challenge. You want to make sure you got something fresh. You're going to the store. You don't know when you're going to cook it. Maybe like me, you get distracted and decide you're going to do takeout that night. We've got a sustainable solution for you. It's the Wild Alaskan Company. It's the best way to get wild-caught, perfectly portioned, nutrient-dense seafood delivered directly to your door. Trust me, you haven't tasted fish this good. We got a bunch of different varietals. There was both sockeye and coho salmon, a Pacific halibut, Pacific rockfish, and I mean the box was so big I had to give some of it to my neighbors because there are only the three of us. This isn't the JVL household. We don't have 100 people here, and let me tell you, it was amazing. We did I did a sous vide on one of them. I think it was a Pacific halibut. We did a little baking action on another one. Kid liked it. Husband liked it. Podcast host liked it. Family approved. The fish is 100% wild caught and never farmed. It's nutrient rich and full of flavor. It's frozen fresh off the boat to lock in taste, texture, and nutrients like omega-3s. So get on board. Not all fish are the same. Get seafood you can trust. Go to wildalaskan.com/bulwark for $35 off your first box of premium wild-caught seafood. That's wildalaskan.com/bulwark for $35 off your first order. Thanks to Wild Alaskan Company. you have any old Jeb stories for me from the early days?
So I was his first press secretary when he wins governor the first time.
Okay.
And I went and interviewed for the job. I worked in California politics, and I knew a bunch of folks who'd worked for his dad. So that was my connection to his world after he wins. And I went out there and interviewed, and it was right after Lawton Childs died.
Yeah.
And so, and Jeb, he's just always kind of walking around unstaffed and like taller than everybody. Yeah. And so I went and interviewed with
questions from people, strangers, journalists, whatever.
Yeah. And I interviewed with his chief of staff, Sally Bradshaw, and his communications director, Corey Tilley. And they were amazing. And I have no idea to this day what they saw in me. But then Jeb, I guess, heard that I spoke Spanish. And so came in and started talking to me in Spanish. And he felt like he really owed to the Cuban community in South Florida his victory. And so liked that I spoke Spanish. And I got that job. I arrived in Tallahassee with like a comforter in my suitcase and had to find a place to live. It was very intrepid when I look back, but because of the sunshine laws, the press secretary always has to travel with Jeb. So I went everywhere with him, and he played a lot of golf, and he played one day with Tiger Woods. And so I went with Jeb, and Tiger Woods had gone to Stanford and I'd gone to Berkeley. And so we like kind of like 6 degrees. And the Nike commercial, he wasn't flirting. No, Tiger Woods never flirted with me, but on his backswing, that Nike app is out that said, "I am Tiger Woods." So he was, isn't that the backswing? And I said, "I am Tiger Woods." And Jeb looked at me like he wanted to fucking kill me. And Tiger Woods started laughing. And I was like, "See, that was funny. You're old." So that was my golfing with Jeb's story, but you can see him.
Easy to get along with on the road.
Oh, he was
right?
easy. He's like zero maintenance. The plane was so scary and old. I was always afraid I was going to plunge to my death. And he just sort of like did his emails, and he called his laptop his whoopee and was always emailing back a constituent about something. And he was really easy, really low maintenance.
I love Jeb. He was so easy to hang out. It was so funny in private. It never like really couldn't translate it on the debate stage and in private. Like that is just some people. I hear Hillary's like that. I've never got to hang out with Hillary. There are others. Thing with Jeb that's funny that I think about in your context is he really, I think, was kind of surprised by the direction of where everything was going. And so I got to kind of live it with him firsthand, like first running and then seeing how crazy the MAGAs had gotten. And like he's getting out of it because he'd been out of kind of day-to-day politics for a while, and people were saying crazy shit to him all the time, and he's like, look at me, and it's like, what are they even talking about?
Yeah.
You know? And so he saw that change on the one hand, and then he kind of saw your radicalization on the other hand, because you did the post interview with him. And I remember the moment where you guys were talking about McCain and Palin or something, and you're like, yeah, I didn't even vote for John McCain. And he was like, what? You didn't even vote for John McCain?
Yeah.
And I like the kind of extinction of the Jeb Republican. Like I got to live with him, and it's sad. But also it was kind of amusing at the same time.
Yeah. So I spent a lot of time with their parents in 2016. I went up to Kennebunkport.
Yeah, I got to too. It was really nice.
I think 2 or 3 times during the 2016 campaign. And in some ways that was like a better lens for me because they'd become so close to the Clintons that I don't think they were as allergic to the idea of Democrats in 15, 16. And they might disagree with this. I've actually never talked to either of them about it. But I think that 41 especially, because of his, I mean, you've been there. Like he valued diplomacy as a principle. And I think he valued his role as America's diplomat and president as much as anything that he was ever a part of. And so I think they were able to get to Hillary Clinton in 2016 a lot easier than, or at least George H.W. Bush, easier than Jeb or George W. And so I don't think he was as jolted by what had happened. And Barbara Bush was like, in some ways, the most astute political observer in the whole family. Like I remember talking to her after 2008, and she understood not just how challenging Palin was as a candidate, but what it meant that the party responded the way they did to Palin. So, I think as a family, they felt it all, and they felt a lot of, at least 41, the 41s felt a lot of it. And I really was never able to draw Jeb out on how he felt about any of it. Yeah. But I think the 41s felt a lot of it.
They were more feelings oriented. Jeb was more like his dad, really. And you get more feelings oriented as you get older. Barbara and W is more like Barbara. I got to spend just a little bit of time with them both, and they like the level of clear eyed they were about all of this.
Cool.
I mean, and I would only get to hear half the convo, but Jeb would call his dad a lot, like during the campaign, like from the car. And I didn't have to actually hear what was on the other side of the phone to get a sense from what 41 was saying about Trump and with the movement of the party. And so, and their political assessment of our viability was also right on. At least Barbara's was.
I mean, look, their political assessment of our weakness in 2005. I mean, when I was George W. Bush's communications director, they consumed a lot more of the punditry and the press coverage than he did. And so we heard from them a lot, and they were brilliant political minds.
I miss them. All right, one more Republican thing, and then we'll stop with old Republican shit and do a little bit more business. People are the Mondale listeners of the podcast are getting bored with this hagiography.
I told you there's only like 17 people who give a shit.
Well, luckily they're Bulwark consumers for the most part. Have you seen the story of Matt Gaetz' mom yelling at him?
No.
I was texting with your friend Sally Bradshaw. He mentioned earlier, Jeb's old chief of staff, about this morning, so I do need to mention this. As I was mentioning last night, I was scrolling social media in bed, which I shouldn't be doing. This is what I do, though, or after midnight if I can't sleep. I was on TikTok. Shouldn't be on TikTok.
I don't even have TikTok. That's how old I am.
It's the Chinese, and you shouldn't have it, children. But also, the Chinese have done a really great job. And
awesome.
My algorithm just feeds me only things I care about. Like, they're very good. They've figured it out. And among the things I care about was there's this young woman who was on an airplane sitting behind Matt Gaetz. And she is videotaping him feverishly texting on his phone. And Matt Gaetz has admitted this is him already this morning. And Matt Gaetz he has old man font on his phone. I don't know. He might need some bifocals. I recommend Williamson Eye in Baton Rouge. Yeah. See, it's huge font, and so you can see it all clearly. And Mrs. Gaetz is chastising him for going against Trump on the war.
Wow.
And they're going back and forth, and she's like, "You're going to lose your job in the media. You're already out of Congress."
That's amazing.
And she's like, "Don't be criticizing the president or his actions. He's trying to keep us safe. MAGA will turn on you." Wow. And it's just, the whole thing is a funny and also kind of sad encapsulation of like what we've all seen, right?
Yeah.
Like I tweeted at Matt this morning. I was like, "Oh, a family member's mad that you're not fully, a Fox watching family member is upset that you're not fully on board with Donald Trump. Like, welcome to the resistance." We've all been there. Like, I don't know. We've all been like, how do you process all that?
Well, I mean, I think the intervention in the Middle East is a real thing. I mean, I think that Matt Gaetz speaks for probably more MAGA voters than his mother does. I didn't think I'd ever find myself defending Matt Gaetz, but I mean, I think that a lot of what turned off the base of the Republican Party at the end of the Bush era, and you and I both dealt with this in a political context, was support for the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. And so I think part of it is just voters found Trump really entertaining. They liked everything that offended a lot of the rest of us, but they also agreed with him on not getting involved in wars in the Middle East. And so this is the ultimate betrayal. This and making everything more expensive through his asinine trade war are the ultimate political betrayals.
Yeah. It's kind of like the, what's the phrase? Like, the immovable force, the unstoppable object, or whatever it is. I mean, it's an immovable object, unstoppable force, one of them. And with the voters, right, which is being demonstrated in this Gaetz family text, right, where it's like, on the one hand, it's just slavish cultishness, devotion to Trump.
Yeah.
And on the other hand, it's this kind of the pure MAGA id of, oh, the old establishment Republicans did us wrong.
Yeah.
And like kind of who wins that battle. That's real, I think.
Totally. And I think the sort of veil on top of all of it is the fear factor, and it ties the Murkowski stuff to the Gaetz, mother stuff to, because they're so thuggish to their own, there's a real fear to either opposing Trump, even if it's to actually stick up for what Trump was originally about, or to, criticize anything he does, even when it looks pretty boneheaded.
I'm sure you get this. What do you say to people who come to you and like, I'm guessing you get this as much as I do, which is like, I listen to you because I've got MAGA family members, and like you're kind of a stand-in for them as like a sane person who like I can disagree with on whatever certain policies sometimes. Like, what do you say to the like that? Like how you deal with the cult side of it?
Well, I think you have to look, I think you have to love your family no matter who they support and vote for. But I think you have
You
to
have like a
make,
menagerie back there. We
I've
had
got three,
babies.
I've got,
Mike Schmidt walked through, and how
I've
many
got,
animals? There's
I've
animals
got
now.
3 Vizslas today. So I have
Okay.
2 Vizslas.
Oh,
And
Vizslas. That's
Vizslas
cute.
are nuts. They're baby Gaetz, so they might make an appearance. And then I have a third. I have my ex-husband's Vizsla who we're babysitting for the day.
Oh,
So I've got
nice.
3 little brown dogs. They're so cute.
They're Hungarian, right?
They're
Vizslas are
Hungarian pointers. Yeah, they're so
That's
cute. We
Little
always
fascist dogs.
we joke with them about Orban. They got out. But they're 3, 4, and 10, and they're huge personalities. And so someone is my son and Mike are probably leaving, and so they're probably wailing.
Got it.
Yeah, I'm sorry, there's a lot of background noise.
That's all right. No, it's great. Anyway, love you. People want Nicolle Wallace unfiltered. They want to see what's happening in your life.
Yeah,
you have this love. I
Yeah.
promise you, there's a lot of love for you out there.
Oh, it's so nice. It's so nice.
I hear about it all the time.
Oh,
If I
it's so
texted you every time somebody's like, "Will you tell Nicolle Wallace I hope she's doing okay?"
It's so nice.
You'd stop responding to my text.
It's so nice. It's
So anyway,
nice.
you said you got to love your family members.
Oh, so you got to love your family members, but I think you have to protect yourself from the gaslighting. And I think like this is the work for therapists, not cable news hosts. But I think that they have now been marinating. Look, like I think it really started with the birth certificate, right? Like if you're really MAGA, you've been along for a lot of the journey. And so it started with like the delusions about, Obama and Eric Holder. And I remember doing Chris Wallace's show when I wrote a novel, and he was such a sweet guy. And he said to me, I was on because I'd written a novel, and he let me join the his Sunday show panel, and I was going to get to plug my novel, but I had to sort of do news of the day with him. I said, sure. And he said, you've been out for a while. We're going to talk about the Fast and the Furious. And I was like, what is that? This was when it was sort of a right wing thing and hadn't really burst, it becomes more of a mainstream political story, and it becomes stuff that the Obama White House has to deal with. But this is early. And you think about all of the seasons, right, that MAGA voters have watched. It started with the birth certificate. It went through Fast and the Furious. It went through all of the lies they've been fed. And so how I deal with it is that I don't deal with it. I don't talk politics. There's so much that Trump has politicized now that it's like it leaves you kind of talking about the weather and family and stuff that has nothing to do with the world. But that's
good NBA finals.
Sports. Yeah. I mean, we deal with, but my team is pretty political, so they don't always love but no, I mean, really, it is. It's a lot of sports.
Because you're the Warriors, right? The Warriors.
Yeah. But it's a lot of sports, and I do have a piece where with my family, like it's just politics, and I love them to death, and we just don't talk about it.
Yeah. All right, on therapist questions, since you mentioned this is maybe a job for your therapist. I remember we had a talk on set. I don't know, maybe around Christmas time. So
right after the election. Yeah,
maybe it was around Thanksgiving. Actually, it was pretty soon after. And I was like, I don't know how I'm going to do this. Like, I basically said to you, how are you going to do it? I don't know how I'm going to wake up and care about these fucking people every day. I hate them. They're horrible. I kind of want them to fail, but I don't want the country to fail. And how can I possibly like bring myself to care about this? Like if this was not my job, I would just totally turn off everything and start reading gay novels and just pretend like it doesn't exist. I swear to God, that's what I would do. If my husband was independently wealthy or something. And I don't know, I've come around on it, but I guess I won't prejudice you with your answer. How did you process that?
Well, I remember that conversation. Yeah. And I think the hardest thing for me about his victory was that everything he was going to do that threatened the democracy was stuff he said he was going to do. So it's not like, oh, they didn't believe me with my warnings. They didn't believe him. And I thought that was such a mind fuck. Like he ran on retribution. He ran on charging Liz Cheney and Mark Milley with treason. He ran on turning the FBI and the DOJ inside out. He ran on putting people like Tulsi Gabbard in charge of national security. And so he ran on mass deportations. To me, he ran on the dehumanization of people in this country illegally and won. And so that felt like a blow to me. What I have found is that, and Alicia Menendez said this to me, like, just bear witness. Like what our viewers need us to do is bear witness. And I have found that was the best advice I got. And then a lot of people reached out to me and said, what do we do? And I said, just take care of your people, like check on your people, check on them every day in the beginning, people that you think are going to be really upset. And then just, try to see them more. And I feel like those two things are enough. And it's really satisfying. And I actually find doing my job, just holding up a mirror, is easier than it was in Trump 1.0 because he's doing it all in the open. There would be stories that would break in the Times and the Post, and we'd run through our standards department. And because it was the Times and the Post, we were always allowed to use them, but you were relying on, what felt like, really, my husband did a lot of that reporting. I mean, this is almost, and I'm not saying there isn't important reporting, but this is almost all out in the open. So we're holding up a mirror and saying, this is what we're getting. And I find that as a cable host, the easiest kind of job. It's like webcam coverage. We're just showing what's happening. And then I think as my colleague Rachel Maddow is doing, showing the reaction is really satisfying. Like showing that the American people in year one of a 4-year term are out in the streets in historic numbers is incredible. But it's probably the second piece. And that's where the conversation, I think emanated from our conversation. It's, I find myself, have you been like whitewater rafting, like where they tie all the rafts together?
Yeah, sure.
Like, I feel like we're on the rapids, but our rafts are all tied together. Like the food might fly out and one raft might tip over, but we're all tied together. So someone will come and get us. Yeah. And so I do kind of feel like I'm on one of those like chartered whitewater rafting trips where we're all tied together and like, it's bumpy. And we knew it was going to be bumpy. But we're all kind of in it together. Does that make sense?
It does. And it doesn't feel like it's interesting you say all that because I watch you and it's like, it doesn't seem like you're mailing it in up there. You're still feeling all the feelings. You're still doing it and showing everybody and passionate about it. And that is kind of a challenge in itself. There are people in media that are mailing it in.
Well, I also think like I had this real shift in my relationship with my viewers during COVID, where I stayed home for 1.5 years. My son stayed out of school for 1.5 years. So it was like me in the basement, into the camera, to the viewers. And what they gave back to me was life-changing. I mean, we celebrated a life well lived every day, someone that died from COVID. And I don't know. I meet viewers of the show in the street all the time, and it makes my day when people say they watch. Like maybe it's coming to these jobs as a second career that you don't feel like you're entitled to an audience. You don't feel like you're entitled to have these jobs. And so you feel more grateful for them. But I don't know if more is the right word. I feel completely inspired by having 2 hours to fill every day.
Well, you're booing me because it's been easier than I thought. I needed your little pep talk because I was worried about it. All right, let's get to.
I mean, don't you feel the same way? I mean, and
oh no, I've ended up feeling the same way. I was in a pretty dark place when we had that conversation between the election and maybe 2 days after the inauguration. The inauguration was pretty hard for me. I think I was on your show on inauguration day and I'm like lashing out. I'm like, why are we acting like this is normal? Like, what in the fuck is happening right now?
You and Michael Steele were like, why are we covering this?
Like, what is this? Like, we're calling him sir. We're like grading it like we're figure skating, judging it. And like the billionaires are there. Like, what is happening? So anyway, I was a little, but I'm with you. I don't know. It's awesome to hear from people. I love the audience. It is fulfilling. It's been more fulfilling than I thought to just go out there and just say whatever you think.
My audience loves you, I think, because you haven't sugarcoated the journey.
Yeah. Just feel like what I ended up saying to folks here was, I'm just going to care what I care about. Mm-hmm. I'm going to care about what I care about and talk to you about that. And so if there's stupid Trump stuff, and I'm not going to pretend to be outraged about it, Mm-hmm. And we're going to be on a remote. And some days I'm going to be angry, and some days I'll be sad, and some days I'll be laughing and pointing and laughing, and we'll just do all of it. Let's just feel all the feelings.
Yeah.
All right, let's do big picture Trump stuff, then I'll let you go. What scares you the most?
Oh, everything. I mean, I'm scared. I remember the first day I read about the deportations to El Salvador of the alleged Tren de Aragua members for whom no evidence was ever presented that they had anything to do with Tren de Aragua. And I remember saying to Mike, like, I wish I didn't feel so gutted, and I wish I could stop thinking about these guys being scared in El Salvador. And then I was somewhere. I was in Westchester. It's usually a baseball trip that has me. I don't know what I was doing, but we stopped to get something to eat, and I saw the paid ads that Homeland Security was doing in front of the deportees who were now prisoners at CCOT, and I was gutted. And I think I'm sometimes scared by how much anguish I feel over how they're treating human beings. But I think that if you abandon the anguish, then you carry out horrible things against human beings. And so I don't know, maybe that's too too circular and not very satisfying, but I'm scared about how much it bothers me that so many people are suffering. And I spent some time with folks close to former President Obama after the election, and I said, well, what's our guess on what happens? And they kind of said, look, it's not zero chance that it's catastrophic. It's far more likely that we kind of muddle through, but a lot of people are going to suffer. And I'm scared of all that suffering, of witnessing it, of doing it justice, of covering it responsibly. And I refuse to accept that there's a quorum that wants to see people suffer. I just refuse to accept that.
What's your level of alarm that, I use the term pro-democracy coalition, and people are always like, oh, it could be the end of democracy. And I get frustrated with that conversation, because it's like, you either have democracy or you don't, when it's much more nuanced than that. Like, but what's your level of alarm that like the whole system crumbles over the next 3 years?
Well, he's not suddenly totally competent, right? So he's not like good at any one thing. The military is still great. And so, it appears that the military carried out a plan, executed a plan as it was written out. But he's lost more in court than I think probably like the last 10 presidents added together times 2. I mean, I haven't done the math, but he's running up against a lot of things that are illegal. I try not to get ahead of the story in terms of where will we be in 3.5 years. I've never covered his, I'm going to run for another term, because you can't run for another term. And to do that, you're making all these assumptions that there's no more constitution, there's no more courts, and, but my alarm in the moment is really around Republicans greenlighting anti-democratic practices. It's around Republicans greenlighting the politicization of SDNY. And I know we had to move on because so much has happened, but these were a bunch of Federalist Society lawyers of an SDNY that were bringing the Eric Adams case. And the fact that Emil Bobe and all these folks at DOJ ran out a bunch of conservatives, and Mitch McConnell said nothing, whose whole reason for like swallowing it with swallowing his pride and swallowing his integrity when it came to Trump was about remaking the judiciary. So he sits there silently when the Trump administration runs out the kind of people that he's sort of had an affinity for through his entire career. So it's the silence of Republicans around the politicization of the rule of law and the indifference to due process and all the rhetoric around ignoring court rulings that I find the scariest.
Yeah. That's good. That's not hair on fire. That's not what your opponents would say about you. That's right. I think that's it's like, it could be very bad. There are a lot of concerning warning signs, and we'll be here to monitor how it plays out. That's a healthy way to deal with it.
Well, what do you think?
That's what I think. My answer to that question is like, I don't know. Is what you tell me, and I mean, you being the audience, what percentage chance you think that it is that he tries to do another term, or that he tries to end democracy? And I think that anyone you ask that question to, their answer is somewhere from like 1% to maybe the most TDS riddled people say 80%, right? But like, if your answer is 1%, that's still very bad. And we're in a very bad place that like the answer isn't 0, where it's been for our entire parents' lives and our lives. And that's alarming to me. And I think that you can be alarmed and be vigilant without being like hysterical,
Yeah. And look, I mean, I think in defense of the people who are hysterical and alarmed, nothing has held, right? Like he was impeached twice. And
the most hysterical people have definitely been more right than the most sanguine people, for sure.
Correct. And this is why when people trash the left, like the left's been right about most things when it comes to Trump.
His biggest political weakness, you think, is his incompetence? Like the biggest vulnerability?
Trump's biggest political weakness is his indifference to the cost of things. Because there are a ton of voters who voted for him out of economic anxiety.
Yeah. All right. You've got a new pod. I want to hear about that. And then I have one final special rapid fire question. So the new pod, why are you doing it? You're busy enough. You've got 2 kids now. You're doing baseball tournaments. You're doing weekend anchoring. 2 hours. You're like, I need something else. I want to beat Tim Miller in the podcast rankings. What's the motivation for this?
So someone said to me, get off my lawn. I wanted to do more when he won. I went to, Rashida was still the president of MSNBC, and I wanted to do more. I think Rachel had the same instinct. She went out and anchored the first 100 days. I wanted to do more. Nobody that I work for or with thought a third hour was a good idea. I don't know how, Joe and Mika do it, but they have like a village and it's different when it's 1 hour. So I also,
I'm happy they didn't give you a third hour. That would have been more time for more obligations for me.
You would have spent a lot more time on television. But I also take the note that the media, I mean, Megyn Kelly talked about this in an interview with the New York Times. I think she's right. Like, this is how people want to hear the news from you, and they don't want it separated from your opinions. And you do a better newscast than I do in terms of really like singling or paring it down to things that you know your audience cares about, giving them the news and the context. And I think I wanted to be in the space without trying to replicate what I do on the show. And then I actually think the best people was Trump's best brand. I think in 2016, the way he wins the first time is by acknowledging that people might not be totally comfortable with a guy who's never done anything in politics. And so he promises his base, I'll bring in the best people. And then he kind of sort of does it with Mattis and Milley and
Reince doesn't count, but
somewhat
happy.
But to his supporters, they look like Mattis looks like he's at essential casting, and the people that he brings in, he can at least sell it to half the country that they're the best people. And I think when he picked Matt Gaetz, he had clearly abandoned the brand. And I thought that was the most amazing thing about tapping Matt Gaetz. Wasn't that he was investigated for child sex trafficking, or that he had sent like so many videos of himself having sex around on his phone that Mark Wayne Mullen was like, he took, they could talk about how I don't even want to say it's not because I'm a prude, but because it's disgusting mental images. But the whole idea that the best people have been abandoned, and we know the best people, right? And they're the people you talk to, they're the people I get to talk to. So I wanted to sort of reappropriate the brand, the best people, and then bring some of the wisdom that I get from people that maybe don't want to come on the show, don't want to be embroiled in the daily news cycle in the podcast.
That's been cool. I was listening to Doc Rivers this morning.
He's so cool.
I gotta get his digits from you.
He's so cool.
And it is. I'm glad you mentioned the short-lived Matt Gaetz nomination. I don't think that anybody. Not that we were looking forward to Matt Gaetz being Attorney General, we weren't, but the concept of him as nomination was something that we aligned on as bringing us a little bit of joy during the interregnum.
But you look at Pam Bondi, like in hindsight, I'm not sure he would have been worse.
Oh, no way. Clearly wouldn't have been. Yeah, I'm with you. It's like the Cash situation. It's like actually the most incompetent people are a better bet for us because they don't know, they don't know their way around. It's a little harder for them to do jobs. Yeah. Cash Patel year 3 is alarming. Okay, now we're back to what's the scariest question, Nicolle? All right, final thing. Mount Rushmore. I like to ask people to give us a Mount Rushmore. You get the Mount Rushmore of Deadline White House guests.
Oh, who are my guests? Who do
Yeah,
I put on the-
which of your guests would you put
I mean, you
on
just
the
have to
Mount
watch-
Rushmore
you
of
just
your
have to-
guests?
I mean, anyone that watches could you tell me who they are? You watch my show every day. You're on
I'm
it.
putting you on the spot.
Well, so
Putting you
you're
the
on
spot.
it. Eddie Glad is on it.
Claire.
Claire is on it, and Andrew Weissman.
There you go. Ouch.
Yeah.
There are some people that are hardest hit right there. We're not going to name them, but I will be sending them
Well,
this clip.
no, but I would just say that the show is built around the reporters.
John
who write
Heilman
the
didn't make
story.
it, for example.
John Heilman is too busy for me a lot of days, but you never say no. Claire never says no. Eddie Glad never says no. And Andrew Weissman never says no, no matter where you guys are. No, Heilman is a media empire in his own right. He doesn't need to be on the deadline.
Some people hardest hit there. I'm just going to
No,
leave it at that.
no.
I am saying no to you. Actually, I'm going on vacation, a real vacation.
Oh,
where
I'm so glad.
I'm not doing any deadline
Good.
White House from
Say
Madrid.
no. Say no.
I'm saying no. 1 week. You're gonna have to survive 1 week without me.
We will be here when you get back. I mean, the thing I think Deadline White House is like that sports bar that has to have like a good turkey burger and a real salad and be open every night. Like we'll be there. We'll be here when you get back.
I look forward to being back. I really appreciate you always having me on. It's a delight. This has been a great joy of this horrible era is getting to know you, and I appreciate you doing the pod.
I love you so much. Thank you so much for having me
All right,
on
we'll
the
see
pod.
you, Nicolle. Give my love to the kiddos, and we'll see you on TV.
Sorry they were so loud.
I don't know. Maybe in a couple hours, probably. I don't know. Whatever Clary tells me.
Exactly.
That's Nicolle Wallace. We'll be back here tomorrow with another one of my favorite guests. Not as good as Nicolle, but he'll be pretty good. So we'll see you all then. Peace.